history of the Newton family has been sent to me by James Newton's great-great-great-grandson, Robert Newton, who originates from New Zealand, but now lives in Perth, Canada, and it gives a short insight into the Newton family that lived for many generations behind the old Fountain Inn in Deal. From 1851 they lived in number 5 and number 7 Beach Street, Deal. Not a lot of information is available about their exploits in Deal, but there is a short description of their later times described here. James Newton was a Deal boatman and had 11 children, 5 sons and 6 girls. All survived to adulthood. The 3 oldest sons drowned at sea in the 1850s whilst going to the aid of a ship off Walmer in 1848. James Newton drowned in a shipping accident off Walmer Castle on November the 3rd, 1855. Later, his wife Gemma was interned with him, then his daughter Martha Ann. The 2 youngest sons with their young families emigrated to Lyttelton, New Zealand, accepting assisted passages on the ship Mystery in December 1858. Edward James' name appears on the depth list of the Mystery as balance December the 10th, 1858 up to September the 30th, 1872 of 34 shillings. It is classified as a doubtful debt, a boatman with a very large family to support. John Henry Sr., 1826 to 1918, born in Deal, Kent, and arriving in Lyttelton, New Zealand in 1859. John resided at 41 Exeter Street, Lyttelton, New Zealand. He was the last of the boatmen from Deal who came to Lyttelton to enter pilot service, and he served in the capacity of pilot until the pilot station was shifted to the Lyttelton Heads. He then followed the occupation of waterman and fisherman until his 75th year, when he retired. He left 5 sons, one who resides in Belfast, one in Lyttelton and another in Wellington. 2 are employed in the postal service and telegraph service at Christchurch. He is also survived by 2 daughters who reside at the port, and by 28 grandchildren and 45 great-grandchildren. John Newton was buried on the 12th of August 1918, aged 93. 2 of the Newton daughters are recorded as living in the almshouses in Deal with their husbands in the 1891 census. Jemima Caroline Jane Newton was born on the 1st of June 1788 in Barham, Kent. She married James Newton on the 29th of May 1805 in Deal, Kent, and died on the 22nd of August 1876 in Deal. Jemima's mother Mary was born at Prebbles. She came from a long-established and well-connected Kent family that originally settled in Denton in the mid-15th century. Sadly for Jemima, her mother died when she was 6. Her father remarried 9 months later. Then a new baby arrived on the scene nearly every year thereafter. At 12, Jemima moved to Dover and lived with her newly married brother. He was a mariner, and through him Jemima met her husband, James, a boatman who became a Sankport pilot at Deal. Jemima married James when she was 16. He was 22. Over a period of 23 years, from the age of 17 to 40, she bore him 11 children. They all reached adulthood. The 5 sons became mariners like their father, and of the 6 daughters, 4 married mariners. Jemima lived through treacherous times, dangerous for the country during the Napoleonic Wars for the town of Deal, a military, seafaring and smuggling town, and for her seafaring husband and children. The sea took the life of her husband and 3 of her sons. 1 daughter emigrated with her husband and adult offspring to South Australia, whilst economic hardship forced her 2 youngest sons to accept assisted passages for themselves and their young families to Lyttelton, New Zealand. In Deal, only 3 daughters, Mary Spears, Martha Marsh and Maria Woodrider, outlived her. Family was everything to Jemima. Her closeness to her daughters helped her achieve an old age, surrounded by love. Her story tells quite a bit of information about Deal, as it was in the early 1800s, and describes the town and boatmen. I considered, as the story was original, that it should be read in 2 or 3 chapters, so as not to bore the listener. Many pictures of Deal will pass by whilst the story is being told. This is her story. Sunday, April the 7th, 1861. It's taken a century and a half to catch up with Jemima. I came down to Dill from Ramsgate on a steam train. It's a good service. Trains have been running on this line for about 15 years now. It's a bad habit of mine, inexcusably I know, but I'm invariably late, and this time was no exception. The train was pulling away from the platform, hissing and clunking into action. The guard was officiously waving his green flag, but he kindly left the carriage door open for me. Fortunately, it takes a while for an engine to gather steam and get moving. With a bit of a run, I made it. Mind you, I'm in my 70s, just like the lady I'm hoping to meet, so it took me some time to catch my breath. I settled down and looked through the material I'd brought with me. To start with, I was hoping to put Jemima at ease with this little sketch J.M.W. Turner had composed while working on Dill Beach in the 1830s. I also had the only daguerreotype in existence of Turner. I thought it might interest her. From the curious looks I was getting from my fellow travellers, I realised my dress was unusual to them. I was in jeans, a sweater and my waterproof down jacket. Well, you never know what you're going to get for weather on the coast in early April. I think it was the baseball cap that really got the punter staring, so I took it off. Dill Station is on Queen Street, near the centre of the town. I was in a hurry. It was late afternoon and I had to get to the north end of the beach street. I walked briskly up Middle Street. Luckily, it was quiet being Sunday. They say there's a pub for every day of the year in Dill, and as I turned out from Griffin Street onto Beach Street, I believed it. Right on the beach was the Fox Inn. Then on the west side of Beach Street, overlooking the Capstan grounds, at the corner with Exchange Street, was the Royal Exchange Hotel. The King's Arms adjoined it. Then the Globe, 2 doors north. Though that might be a private boarding house now. 1 block north on the corner of Dolphin Street is the Yarmouth Packet, where Mr. Henry West is the long-term landlord. In 1858, the pub was described as being a house much frequented by North Sea pilots. Next up is the Scarborough Cat, on the corner with North Street. It was boarded up by the previous landlord, the amazingly named One Spiffius Sneller. He recently built the Napier Tavern right on the beach, straight across from the Cat. Then he moved his business over and closed the Cat. One Spiffius built the veranda on the back of the Napier that overlooks the sea. Boatmen come, hang out here and look for vessels in distress on the Goodwin Sands or in the Downs. A good place to spot for business. In the census, the Cat was again operating in a small way, with a widower, Isaac Griffith Brown, running it. Lastly, on the north corner of North Street is the Dill Lugger. They want a spirit licence, permitting them to serve men coming in from the sea late at night. But as they've run afoul of licensing laws for serving on a Sunday, I don't think they'll get it. 8 pubs within 100 metres. A person could get seriously drunk in Dill. Having checked out all the pubs, I finally reached the Seagirt building, aptly named. It's on the beach, and the sea comes right up on 3 sides at high tide. It's here that Jemima lives, with her unmarried youngest daughter, Maria. Now she's either living with the Birches, her daughter Harriet and son-in-law William Birch, at 5 Beach Street, or with the Spears, her daughter Mary and son-in-law Richard Spears at 7 Beach Street. No one I asked seemed sure which daughter and son-in-law she was with these days. I banged on the door at number 5 and was surprised when it was opened immediately. The occupant was mutually surprised, but he recovered. "I thought you were the census man." I think my attire puzzled him. "No, I'm not a census man. Actually, I'm here looking for Jemima Newton. I have a little sketch I'd like to give her." His wife came up behind him. She looked to be in her 40s, but it was hard to say. She seemed weak and unwell. "Harriet, this woman is looking for your mother. Did Mum say she was heading to your sister's place?" "Yes, she and Maria took off about 10 minutes ago, Bill." Then turning to me, "They were heading to my sister and brother-in-law's place, 150 Beach Street. If you take off now, you'll easily catch up." They wander along slowly, gossiping and taking everything in as they look out over the beach. Mum's wearing a blue and white shawl, Dad's colours, and Maria's wearing a fancy bonnet. She's a milliner and she just made it. You'll not miss her. William agreed. The hat was a showstopper, but for good or bad, I wasn't sure. True, it didn't take long to find them. Evening was drawing in. The light was fading. Most people were already at home, eating supper and waiting for the census taker. "Good evening. I hope you won't mind my unusual introduction." They looked me over. A curiously dressed old lady in jeans, a puffy jacket, running shoes and a baseball cap. Obviously, they thought I could do with some improvement, but they didn't say so. At least I didn't look threatening. Not at all, not at all," said the daughter Maria, an attractive woman in her 30s. She was carefully dressed, her outfit topped with a bonnet that was indeed something to behold, an advertisement of sorts. Her face was warm and discerning. I could catch a glimpse of the young Jemima in her. Now Jemima was a weather-beaten old lady like myself. She'd spent a lot of time outdoors. Her skin was brown, leathery and very wrinkled. She smiled quite readily, and I couldn't help but notice she only had a couple of teeth. All those babies had depleted her mouth. She was walking along easily, observant of the world around her. "Mrs. Newton," I started. Just call me Jemima, dear." She tapped my hand lightly. "Now for the hard part. Jemima, I've come from 2020. "Ha!" she laughed. "You must have good eyes then." I felt a little more relaxed. She'd a sense of humour, and she seemed interested. I proceeded. "I'm the wife of your great-great-great-grandson, Robin Newton." She took that in. "You must be from away then, 'cause none of my boys in Dill live to have children. The sea can be cruel, you know. That's its way." She became quiet and pensive. I pressed on. "Very true, Jemima. Robin descends from your youngest son, Edward Prebble." "Ah, Prebble," she interjected. "That's my name. I gave my baby the name. Yes, Prebble. That's the name." "Yes, a distinctive name," I interposed. "And it's how we traced you." Now I had her full attention. I brought out Turner's watercolour sketch. "Jemima, does this little picture mean anything to you?" "For goodness sake, why look! Look, Maria! Maria, take a look!" Jemima had a few teeth, but lovely blue eyes. She stared intensely at the sketch. "Maria, old Joe Turner painted little sketches of folk on the beach the time he was here. Maria, Maria, it's me, look!" I loved that pink dress. Wore it for years and patched it till there was nothing left to hold it together. He gave me a little sketch just like this one, but it got lost. Not surprising, our home was hectic. Then I brought out the daguerreotype. "Oh my, that's him! That's old Joe, what a likeness!" I remember thinking how old and crusty he looked. 30 years on now, and he doesn't look so old. Maria returned to the sketch. "Mum, who were you talking to in the picture?" "Well, that's James, your dad, and I think it was Richard's uncle Spears' boat. The Britain's pride. Served him well over the years. Who knows what they were up to?" She fell quiet for a minute. "Old Turner. Well, old to us then. Had his stool and easel set out on the beach and was scribbling away. He'd been staying at the Royal Hotel, or maybe at the fountain next door. Back then, we lived in the tenements behind the fountain. Newtons were there for years, even before Isaac's time. They rented from old Igleton, the bricklayer turned brewer. He'd a lease on the fountain and the beach around it, got it direct from the Archbishop. We called the beach land the Archbishop's Waste. Yes, Newtons always lived on the beach." Jemima was warming her story. "Well, at first we thought old Joe was just a fisherman. He had lines out in the surf. The twins were just boys then. Isaac and Joe were always curious. They got talking to him. He was just any old sailor fella to them. They asked him if he needed anything. 'Well, lads, I'm partial to milk if it's got rum in it.' It so happened some of the good rum had arrived in my kitchen a few weeks prior. You know, every coin has two sides. Now this stuff wasn't the king's side." She paused and looked longingly at the sketch. She was back in full bloom, her family young, her husband a Dill pilot, living in a complicated, dangerous world. This was her time. "Yes, the lads took out rum and milk. To old Joe, the way he drank, he could have been a boatman. Needless to say, endless refills. He was there a few days and he painted a wonderful sea like no one else could. She could see it in her mind's eye. James, my husband, said the sea lived in Turner. Me, I thought his paintings were blurry, but perhaps to him they were clear, as he was always rather drunk. This is the work he created as he sat on the beach in front of the fountain. We'd reached 150 Beach Street. I offered Jemima the little sketch. Really? I nodded. Please take it. I bought it for you. Thank you. What memories it brings back. We're here for supper with Martha and Henry. I'll show it to my grandson James. He's Sarah's son. Oh dear, she's dead 9 years now. Well, Martha hasn't any children of her own, so she took James in. Can you believe it? He's 17 now and a boatman. But it's no life. He's off to Gravesend soon to become a customs officer. Good steady work, and that's hard to find here these days. Well, he knows plenty about customs and contraband growing up in Dill. Maria deflected the conversation away from smuggling. You could join us, meet the family, be part of the census. They put down everyone in the house, you know. I'm not sure how they deal with me. I thought to myself, how would you record someone who didn't arrive on the doorstep for another 160 years? Jemima disappeared inside. Maria continued, would you like to visit Mother tomorrow morning? She'll be home at Seagirt. I accepted readily. Then just out of nowhere she added, I'm working tomorrow. I could make you up a little hat with some lovely feathers just new in. That funny cap of yours does nothing for you. Well, that was honest. I left them to their family gathering and the census taker.